Welcome back to another audio talk. And this time I'm here with Cale Conrad, who's recently done a whole Europe tour with Poppy, doing front of house for Poppy. But he's actually from the country scene, I think, right?
I'm not. I'm not. I'm from the pop scene actually, but I've
Pop.
dabbled enough in country that I think
I feel
people have
like
probably
I
seen me
just
there.
assume everyone in Nashville does country.
No, no, yeah, no. I'm one of the odd people out in Nashville that are pretty primarily in like pop or maybe just pop and rock at this point. So
So, what's your usual stomping grounds? What's your usual gigs?
For the last like 5 or so years, I've been with an artist named Quinn 92 or Quinn XCII is how you spell it. I did Chelsea Cutler at that time, but it kind of got tough to do. So I stayed with Quinn for a long time. He's pretty square in the pop scene. And then until, I've jumped around some country artists and stuff, but that's been one that I've done for a while. And then I've done Bill Murray for the last year and a half, and then in January went and jumped on Poppy, and so that's kind of the most recent thing. But of course, like in this scene, you'll bounce around or you'll get different gigs. And but the Quit 92 I've been with for a long time, and I love that gig. It's very it's square down the pop scene, and all the players are kind of like playing for all other pop artists and stuff, and they're all pretty much LA based. So I am an oddity when it comes to being pretty solely in pop and rock in Nashville.
Interesting. Is that the kind of music you like mixing the most because you personally like it the most, or what's your favorite?
Yeah, I'm such a like pop boy at heart. Like I love the Biebers and the Ariana Grandes and the like I there's something about like pop music in general that there nowadays there's so much more of like a fluidity in the like production elements and what you can get away with, and that I think doesn't totally exist in like other, like even like the metalcore scene is like there's something that makes it metalcore, whereas like pop becomes this like kind of generic tag, which can be frustrating at times. But I think I've always loved the pop scene because you can throw almost anything into it, and it really bases around the production elements. So mixing it live, what I love so much about that part is that I get to hear all of the like pop parts of pop music that I love, like the backing tracks and things like that that are really fun and interesting and stuff. And then you put a band on top of it, which is even a lot of times not in the recordings, and you get to watch them creatively make their piece kind of in the live show, and it feels so collaborative, which is in most, like I said, most genres. I don't know really do it that way. Like a lot more times than not, you're getting, whether it's rock or country or anything, it's kind of to the record. There's obviously like parts that they do and things that they do with intros and transitions, but from like a song to song standpoint, like it's one of those things where if you don't have a band on a recording, you get it and you bring in a band, they get to just play the tracks, and the band is kind of free to be a band. And I think that is what makes it so fun to mix pop music. But I would say the answer is I like it the most, and it's also the most fun to mix. And so it's been a long time. I mean, I've never not liked pop. My mom growing up was just like, it was Cher and it was like all this stuff like
Mhm.
80s pop. So I've been in it for a long time.
And having dipped your toe in different genres too, what do you think is the hardest?
Oh, I think also pop music is kind of the hardest because, like, for a long time, I was with an artist named Judah and the Lion, and they're definitely in the pop scene, but their whole shtick was like folk pop and roll. So it was like folk music on
Mhm.
top of pop. Like, so there was a banjo, mandolin player, electric mandolin, acoustic guitars, electric guitars, and like 808s. And like, then they had like this like rock mentality to it. But it still kind of fit in the pop dynamic. And so there was like kind of clean vocals and yelly vocals and things like that. And so I think that there's different there's hard things about every genre to mix, I think, but I would say that it was probably pop music that was the toughest because they're at least like with Quinn 92, it's his album backing tracks, there's some other stuff in there, but then I've got a band that are all like black gospel church musicians, so that's like a lot of like the drums are very like really tuned high, and like there's a lot of hard playing and there's a lot of stuff going on there, and like bass players who are playing big fills and are dropping down to like low A strings that are really thick and round in the, like the sub area, and like there's a lot of sub information and also like twinkly bits and like stuff in the vocal range, and then there's a vocal on top of it and a guitar play, so it like it's a lot going on in pop mixes, and I think a lot of people see that even when you look at like Bieber and Ariana and stuff, they're like, oh, they're just like playing to tracks. And a lot of times their band is just behind like the upstage curtain and they've got a full band arrangement going. And like T-Pain does this too, but it's with the arrangements, there's so much going on that like really fitting it in and making it feel like it has impact is was like the hardest thing I got into. And same thing with Jude on the Line. It was like I'm taking folk instruments and rock instruments and like a pop sheen and having to like put it all together. And they were some of the hardest I had to do. And but there was hard. There've always been hard things about every genre, so I don't want to like take away the value that in every genre people have hard things to do, like from country, pop, rock, and like kind of metal core stuff that I've done, you know, now with like the new metal scene, like Bad Omens and Poppy and Bill Murray and all that stuff. There's a lot of elements of both. There's so much like pop production, and then like how do I fit like drop D guitars in here with like a beautiful singing vocal and like some other stuff, you know. So I don't want to take away the value that it's hard to mix most
Sure.
genres, but pop I think is the
Your
one thing
personal
is
experience. Yeah.
has thrown the most at me at once and been like,
Hmm.
hey, make this right. And it's like, okay. And it's so it can be a lot to juggle in the pop scene. So
And then comes Justin Bieber and plays Coachella and just sings to a YouTube backing track, and people will think, oh, pop music is so easy to mix.
yeah, well, and it makes sense a little bit. Like that was obviously like a little bit
No,
of
that
a
was a
like, no,
show,
I
I know.
totally get it. But like honestly, I bet that the team on that, the production team in general, probably was like biting their nails because it's like, what if the video doesn't load? And like, what if, you know, it's got delay on it and lag? And I'm sure they did a lot of stuff to do that. But it's like, and then from a front of house team, it was like, his vocals got to be out there, but the only track and backing track I have has his vocal on it. And it's like, how do I mix this in, you know? And it's, I'm sure there was like, some like long standing rehearsals where it was like, hey, how do I make this work? And their guy that mixes Justin Bieber, he's awesome. And but I'm sure it was definitely a headache. But he also had his band upstage behind the wall and
Yeah,
like
that's what
still
you were
playing.
saying before, right?
And so if I'm correct, I'm pretty sure they were up there, and like and those guys are awesome. And but the arrangements that they do is like so different from like YouTube backing track and vocal to like full band
Mm.
production and that. So
Very interesting, definitely. So you were saying you live in Nashville, you do pop music, but you also now toured with Poppy and you've done folk music, which funny enough, little side story, I think my hardest was a ska punk band just because they had so many instruments. So you
oh,
wouldn't
I'm
think that
sure.
punk music is, but there is a violin and there is a trumpet, there's a saxophone, there's acoustic guitar, electric guitar, hard parts. I don't know,
Yeah, I
melodic
mean,
parts, whatever. Yeah,
ska
I feel
music for
that.
sure is like almost like a big
Yeah.
band vibe.
But yeah, back to my question. You live in Nashville, you do all these genres. Do you think, out of personal experience or what you see in the industry there, it is important or is good to live in a place like that to get somewhere in the industry? Because I, for example, do not. I know a lot of people who don't, but I know a lot of people who do. And those people seem to have really good contacts and just be in the mix a little more.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it kind of pinpoints a lot of things that I say to a lot of up and coming and people who want to do this is I tell them to be in a place where it's happening. You know, it's I get a lot of questions all the time and about that. And you know, I would say that I live in Nashville because I love it here, but I moved to Nashville to be kind of where it's happening, and like that's I tried to eliminate anything that would be in my way to doing something I love to do, and that like first and foremost was like, especially when I was starting out, was like travel, like having giving the artist or band another expense to pick me, or because to them I'm just like a name on a page or like maybe a face or a voice, but they've got another person in their city where they don't have to fly him out or pay for the gas or pay him a day rate for the travel or whatever, and they can just get on a bus the 2 days later. And again, maybe they would like what I had done better than this person, but they don't know that. And so for a lot of the industry, I'd say like the business side of it is like they're looking at obstacles and how to avoid obstacles. And so I tried to make it as easy for me to get like hired especially when I was starting out than than other people, I guess. But like also I knew it came with the contacts. So building the relationships here with whether it was like local venues because I was doing a show with an artist there, or festivals, or doing a tour or something, and we're meeting other audio people and lighting and bands. And it was the reason I kind of moved this way. And I agree. I think it's important to live where it's happening, and I think it's hard for people in like Europe and the UK, and there's probably London is not bad, or like somewhere in the UK there, because you guys, a lot of things for you guys are so drivable, or like train, or it's like 50 euros to fly to a totally different country, whereas like for us, it's like that's not as simple. And also Nashville specifically from a geographical standpoint is so central to the United States that like no matter where you're starting, like there are people that I've worked for that live in LA or live in Ohio or wherever, and it's like, hey, we're starting the show here, and it's like, cool, so you don't have to fly me from LA to New York. Like I get to go from like rehearsals in Nashville, sleep in my own bed, so you don't have to get me a hotel. You see what I mean? Like you're just eliminating.
Yeah.
And we have such a huge infrastructure in Nashville for rehearsal spaces. Like Rock Nashville just opened
Yeah.
up and all that stuff. That
Claire,
yeah, exactly. Claire. Well,
the
it's now the whole
rentals.
thing. Yeah. So like
Yeah, it's
Claire is
huge.
now
I
open.
was there this year.
Oh yeah,
Insane.
yeah.
Yeah.
Rock with Rock Nashville being there now, like, and Soundcheck all being together, and it being like all new spaces and enough room. Like even before that though, so many so many people were getting their gear from here, and LA of course, like New York not as much, but between here and LA. And so it's like you could live in either of those places. I think you could move to LA or move to Nashville. For me, it then became like a lifestyle thing. Is like from a I don't know, it was just like more expensive to live in LA. It was like kind of further out from like stuff. I didn't really like the vibe like I was talking about before. Like people are kind of like a little cutthroat about gigs and stuff. And and it also is close to me, like from a moving standpoint. So like I think that, and what I tell people is like you should move to somewhere that it's happening. Like I have a friend who just moved down the street from me, Adam Rowley, who would be another person who'd be great to talk to, who's done King Princess and all these people, and he's from London, and he's been doing gigs flying back and forth from the US and all this stuff forever. But he just moved to Nashville because a lot of the stuff he's been getting has been in Nashville, and it just, the connections go up. It's easier to get on a bus, it's easier to get on a flight, and just all those things you can take down. Like even in a situation where like you're getting interviewed for a gig where they have a US person, and you're in Europe, well, like it's that exact thing, as like that person isn't in Europe, and that's a cost. They have to bring that person over, so they're going to find someone local. Same concept, I think, is
Mm.
like living where it's at. And I tell people even overseas, I'm like, listen, if you want to move to the US, move to, and you want to tour, like move to somewhere that it's happening. Because like now I'm in a spot where they'll fly me anywhere, like I could live anywhere, and I've made enough relationships in that. But and I can move
To
from
start
here,
out.
and yeah. And so I think it's the easiest. It's a long-winded way of saying yes. I would recommend moving somewhere where it's happening, and if that is in somewhere in Europe, great. But I don't know that because that's not where I'm from.
Well, there's a few good places, but it's
I
definitely
figured.
easier to move around here. That's true. And so, apart from be where the magic happens, is there any other tips that you would give an up and coming engineer to start out with? Maybe something that's like how to acquire your skill best, or what to learn first, or what to focus on first.
Oh, that's a great question. I That's a great question. It's so hard because I feel like getting into it, there you kind of are drinking from a fire hose. Like you had mentioned it before at some point while we were talking, like you can kind of learn anything online now, which is great, which is an awesome thing, and there's access to that for pretty much free. And like, but there is, with that comes so much knowledge that's like half baked or it's like doesn't work for everybody, and so it's like hard to accumulate knowledge like that. But if I had to
And it's a
give,
learning by doing thing. Like I don't
oh,
want to say you can learn everything online. I think it's nice to acquire a basic knowledge, but I do think that working on the gig is what makes you learn and get better.
100%. And I say it kind of as a joke most of the time to people, but like it's all theory until you get on stage. Like it's all theory until you get on stage, or you could fill in the blank there with in front of a PA or a console or whatever. And I think if I had to like give somebody who is up and coming, I would probably say the same thing that most people would say is like it is great to get in with like a touring company, like so getting in with a Claire or Black Box or whoever in your area. If you can put yourself out there as whatever, like any kind of tech or whatever, get a part-time thing there, and you want to like see how it goes like from the ground level, that's a great way. I didn't do it that way, but I think it's a great option. I think the other thing is now a lot of those companies, like if you want to bypass that part, I think a lot of those companies, at least here in Nashville with like Claire, I can hit them up and I'll say, hey, I'm like new to this, but I would love to, I'm trying to like tip a console like a Digico or an Allen Heath or whatever, and like run some tracks into it and like learn to mix and like take what I've learned from YouTube and other people and do that. And I recommend people all the time. It's like, hey, call Claire and ask them for whatever console it could be a X32 for all I care, like anything. Get some, stems, which are not really available out there, but there are people who have them. And I've given people stems before, and I'm like, hey, here are my stems from the show, minus the vocal, which is annoying, I know, but I can't really give you that. And like, go take this, put it into an X32 or put it into whatever, and like start playing around, turn it, build something, listen to the record and try to recreate it. Listen to, a left right from somebody who you like, or a show on YouTube, like a live show from YouTube or whatever it is, and recreate that. Like listen to it, have some critical listening, and so like that's one thing I tell people all the time is like get in front of a desk or, learn from anybody you can in person if you can do that. And that's, I have people come up to me all the
Mhm.
time at shows and they're like, what do I need to do to get into this? And I was like, this is a great start. Like what you're doing right now, just talking
Yeah.
to me is like a great start. Like hit me up online. Like we'll chat some. I'll try to see if I can push you in the right direction. Here are the YouTube videos I love. Here are the things I watched. Here's how much time and energy I put into it. How much time I sat on my off time just running mixes and like messing with EQs, and honestly doing it in the box too, like doing it in like Logic and like building a mix. I'm a psychopath. Like on my off days with shows, I'll take the stems, put them in my DAW, and then I remix the show because I'm like trying to find pain points or things I noticed from the night before and trying to figure out where those are at. And sometimes it gets a little like I'm mixing with my eyes, but I'm like, if I couldn't find it that night because of, it's a room and all this stuff, but I knew something was there, I'm like, oh, that came from the drum tracks or whatever. So like I do that, but I tell people that's how I learned, was like really just messing with it. And it sounds so boring because you're just like, well, I want to know how to do it before I do it. Like I'm that person. It's like if I'm not good at something, I'm gonna stop. And so like you want to
Mhm.
know every step before you do it, but sometimes you just gotta get yourself in it. Tech for whoever. Get on platforms like Gigs or other places that are doing that are hiring people, because usually companies are going through that. And that's a shout out to Gigs, and they're awesome. And like get into those spaces. And like YouTube is great. YouTube is great. I agree with you. Like it's awesome, but it is all theory until you step in front of stuff.
Right.
Going to shows is
Right.
good, connecting, and that can get a little weird because you don't want to be that person that's just like nagging the front of house. I get
Yes, but
that.
if you're polite, like I don't know a lot of engineers who would be shitty to you for just approaching them and asking questions.
Yeah, of course. And it's just reading the room. It's just like, hey, I don't want to
Hmm.
bother you. I'm an audio engineer. I'm trying to be like, do you have any quick, like, anything to watch, anything anybody I should talk to or whatever? And usually they'll be like, oh, yeah, just do this. And they're happy to, we're just breaking down a console
Right.
or whatever. So,
Yeah. Well, I guess another thing that you can learn from is making mistakes, as in every aspect of life, but especially in audio, in live audio, if you make a mistake that's audibly like to a lot of people, you will probably not make that mistake again because you learn from that.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any like big lessons that you had to learn, like memories of whoopsies that taught you a big deal and you never made those mistakes again?
Probably more than I care to talk about, but
You
I
don't
can
have
even.
to if you don't want
Oh
to.
no, no, happy to do that. It's all part of the game. Like it's thankfully stuff like that is I think just like mistakes in life, like they don't totally define you and like define who you are forever. And that's the same thing with this. Is like just because I made a mistake doesn't mean I'm a bad mixer. I like had a flub or I'm human or So I'm trying to think. Probably one of my you know what? Actually, I can give one even recent on the Poppy gig itself. Is I there was a thing so this actually has changed. It changed my whole workflow because it happened 5 years ago, and I changed my entire workflow because of it. And it's about muting. And you will never see me ever on a console mute anything pre-show unless it's like obvious to mute it, like it's pink noise or something. But like something I know is happening in the show, and that's groups, matrices, masters, anything. I don't mute anything. I don't have mute groups. I don't mute it from the DCA. I don't do any of that for this reason. And it happened to me on the Poppy gig. It was like, I don't know, show one or two, and I inherited a file, but this wasn't because of that. But we were going through something in soundcheck, and I just went to like mute a few of the lines of tracks so that they could work on something, and I could hear it. And I stepped away, and when I came back, I didn't flip through. I was assuming I do what I always do, which is never mute anything, and that was like an odd day. And we're counting down the show, and I'm pulling this up, and I know how the intro goes, and I'm like, is it just like too much crowd and I can't hear it? And I'm like, no, it's not going. And there's like a talking piece in the beginning of our intro, and
Mm.
I'm like, this is in the track. So I fire through it. I find the three things that I muted, and I unmuted it right at the time that it says House of Poppy, and then the song kicks in, and I was like, oh my.
Oh, yeah,
And
I
so for
saw the
me,
show. I know the exact moment. Yeah.
like for me, it's why I don't ever mute anything. And
So do you
it's
just
not
keep your main fader down and you pull it out once the show starts? That goes to
I
your matrices, or what's your workflow then?
well, it depends on the console because sometimes I can get away with that if I have like the music pre-show channel going straight to the matrices or whatever. But I usually my master always stays up, but it's usually like a DCA, like all down, or like my groups that I know are like four faders or five faders down. Or I have like usually like a band and vocal, like either group or DCA that controls all of it. And those are always down. And I don't bring those up until like 30 seconds before the show. And I call over talkback, like, house is going hot, no more playing, no more tracks. And that's the only that I just don't mute stuff like that. There's no purpose for me to mute it. Like I can just as quickly unmute and mute something as I can like bring a fader up.
Pull
Especially
a
in that
fader up.
scenario.
Interesting.
I do
Yeah.
have mutes that happen that are flipping channels on and off that are like doubled and have two different kinds of processing, but it's on a quick button, and I will always have that channel on. Like there will always be a version of that channel on. So I'm not worried
Mhm.
about that. But when there's only one, I just don't mute it because it happened to me on this, which is funny. It hadn't happened to me in 5 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, it was like show two. And it was my second show with her. Like this is my first tour with her ever. And so I'm sitting there and I'm obviously like sweating bullets, but I know it's not a big
Well,
deal. Like,
it might not even be the artist might not even notice because they have
yeah,
their separate in-ear mix and have that in the ears and maybe not even notice that it's
they
not on
didn't.
outside. They did?
Nobody did. No, no, nobody
Nobody
noticed it.
did.
It was
Okay, yeah.
but and I'll obviously because I unmuted it right when it said House of Poppy, it was like people were just like, "Oh, that's normal." Like the show had only happened one other time, so it's not like there was like videos of the intro. And so and like, not that any of them will watch this, but if they did, they're going to find out that that happened. And I afterwards was just like, "No." And so that's a workflow thing for me. I'm muting like the lesson there is like tab through your file before you start
Right.
the show. Like tab through it, make sure the stuff's up and on or however you work it out that like is ready to go. That was like the lesson I learned. And so like it's rare that I don't just like am the guy who just like zones in and people are like trying to talk to me and I'm just like, is it all on? Is it all going? Is it ready? Can I just throw faders and run? And so it's definitely a big whoops for me. But of course, like not unmuting it is like not a tell on like my mixing ability. It was like it was a
No,
flub. It won't.
absolutely not.
It didn't happen again for 5 years. I'll take that. Like for
But I
however many
like the
shows.
approach of like not muting and using faders only. I've never heard or seen that before, so that's a cool new thing that I've learned today.
Yeah, well, and then,
And
like I said, I got a lot of weird stuff like that, but it's just mostly because of my brain, and I know that like I'll do something like that, and I don't want it to ever happen, and it's never impeded me before.
it's funny how people just develop their own like workflow and then just stick to it. You just have your own way of doing things, and that's why I love talking to different engineers because there's so many different approaches you could have. Um, Now, we talked about a whoopsie, but I'm sure you've had somewhat of like a magical moment, or every now and then you have those moments where everything just clicks and you stand there and you're like, wow, this is awesome. Do you
Hmm.
have any of those moments that you maybe recently or maybe a long time ago had that you can think of?
I typically I'm sure on every tour I at least have one of those, which feels really good when it's like there's payoff there. But I think for me, like my most memorable times mixing have been at Red Rocks in Colorado,
That's so
and
funny because that's on my bucket list. I'm like, one day I want to mix a show at Rat Rocks, then I can retire.
it
That's
was. I
so
mean,
cool that you did that.
it was crazy. My first gig with my it was my first show with Quinn 92 in 2021, and I had at that point. I had done like arenas as a monitor engineer, but as a front of house engineer, like I hadn't really done more than like a couple thousand cap rooms. And I went straight into this pop tour. It's all amphitheaters and a couple arenas. And it was like the first tour back from COVID. And our first show was at Red Rocks. And I'm like mixing Red Rocks. And it was insane. And then
Amazing.
I've gotten to mix Red Rocks once a year every year since 2021. If not, there was one year I mixed it twice with two different artists, but with Quinn 92 pretty much every time. And the fun thing about that is that show, it sells out every time, full cap, like full 10,000. And the most recent show I did with him, and maybe it was two also before that, but like it is always a show where I come in there and it kind of all comes together. Like it is, some of it's the environment, of course, but like the rig is great. Like it's got its quirks, of course, like with the rocks all around and stuff. But my shows there have always, with him specifically, have always like been a like, dang, like this is it. Like this is the peak of it. And I'm sure I've had other venues like that, but Red Rocks is usually like where I sit there and I go, yep, it's happening. Like, well, all the work I've done, it has all come together. Like I hear it all, it's all there, and it's awesome. And like I think it was
Amazing.
so cool. I got it in the mail from Red Rocks. We sold it out, and they sent me a piece of the rock with like a plaque and my name on it, and so for selling
Hell
it out. I
yeah.
mean, most artists will get that, like they'll get a piece of the rock for selling it out. And this was like we had done it 4 or 5 times in a row, and they somehow, like management somehow got me and one other crew person like a piece of the rock with the same plaque and stuff. So it's downstairs, and it'll eventually be in the studio and stuff. But it was a really cool thing, and I was
Very
just like,
cool.
I have a little bit of a memory. And like that show also, I've always recorded myself mixing because it's something I don't want to forget. And it's like kind of same thing you said. It's like, oh, I could just retire after doing that. It's like I have a video of me my phone like at my chest watching me do it, and then I've got one from the side, and it was just like rewatching, and I was just like, I remember this. This was so sick.
Well, congrats. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Before we end this here, do you have one little mixing hack or one thing that you think would be really cool for others to hear?
Mixing hack. Mixing hat. It's probably controversial, but I would
I love
say,
controversial stuff.
yeah, I would say, I am like just remove the waves plugins. Like remove the stuff. Like just like if you can build a mix on a console, like straight out of the console, and it sound like amazing or awesome or whatever level of that for you is important, like that takes you so far. I have used like little bits of like Live Professor here and there and some outboard gear and stuff, but I haven't used waves ever in my career. And until Poppy was the first one that I like really had used some waves in there, and I even ended up taking a lot of it off because it was just built so well in the desk that I didn't really need it. And I think it becomes a crutch, and I think that like it doesn't sound like a hack, but it's like the hardest thing is to take the tools you have at your disposal, which could be waves, and like just use the desk. Like just it most desks these days are that good. And the only other controversial thing, which feels so counterintuitive to this, is compression stacking. Is I like learning about compression stacking and like in different stages has helped me take a mix that is mixing it. And you probably know this about like levels in rooms. Like I when my mix is sitting at 96 dBA, it's sitting at 96 dBA and it's still dynamic because I've got it compressed in a way that is
Yeah,
still
different
musical,
levels.
but it's still musical because they're not all like gain reduction -5 this stage minus,
Mm.
it's all different. And so there's still so much room, and some of them are aimed at RMS and some of them are aimed at peak. And like I've been able to get a 95 dBA mix to feel like a 9800 because of compression stacking, which again sounds counterintuitive to like take all the stuff off of it. But like if you can learn that and how to stage that correctly, then you know I think you're winning. I would say my last one, not to be so long winded, but is gain staging. And I know everybody talks about this, but not just gain staging, it's figuring out where line level is on the desk that you're using. Call the rep, call whoever, but figuring out where line level is on your desk is gonna help. Like, because people say like it's all about the gain staging. It's like, well, where do I gain stage to? Well, on Allen and Heath it might be -12, but on Yamaha it's -18, and on
And on
Digico it's
old Midas
minus.
desks, they tell you to fucking hit it
Yeah,
hard,
exactly. And
right?
it's like, well, where the hell do
Different.
I do this? And so, like, I've been obsessed with finding line level after working on Avid S6L because they zero. It's like zero is what it is. And so, like, I've done a whole like write up on where line level is on all consoles. And so, like, that it doesn't sound like a hack, but it's like I bet you could ask most engineers, most like even pro, maybe the pro ones are know what they're talking about, but like a lot of even the companies, and it's like, where's line level on your desk? And I think a lot of them would be like, actually, I'm not sure. Because they would be like, oh, well, -18 on a DBFS is, or whatever. But it's like, where is it at on your console? Because you're going to get the best sound that way. Is like finding line level. It's the standard operating. So going into waves, going into outboard, internally, like it's all looking for that standard. And it's like, where is line level on your desk? Like find that. And I wrote it all out because anytime I switch desks, I'm like, okay, it's here, 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 and here. And obviously you futz with
Interesting.
that. You futz with that a little bit and find a little
Yeah.
bit better level. But it's a great starting point.
Right. No, I think those are super valid points you make, especially going back to the first one. A lot of people listening to this, I would say 90% of the engineers listening to this don't have the tools. They don't have the waves. They don't have the S6s. They work with what they have. And if they're able to build a good mix with what they have, they should be really proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done
Period.
everything from small clubs to
Mhm.
Red Rocks to arenas on just a board mix, like nothing else. And I
Mm.
get comments on it all the time. Like, is that just coming off the desk? It's like, yep, dude, that's all I got. And like, they're like,
Yeah.
wow, I wasn't expecting that. Or like festivals and stuff. And it's like, you can do it. Like, if I can do it, I guarantee, I promise you, all these any engineers who are coming up who are even more pro than they can all do it. Like, if you can make that, then just adding the extra stuff is just sauce on top.
Sprinkle on top. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. And another thing about the second thing you said with the gain staging, with the like compression levels, especially in Europe. You really have to stick to those limits that they give you. You just have to make a powerful mix within whatever is legally allowed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you're able
I
to
ran into
create
it
that,
while we were over there, and it was like, I had people. They're like,
yeah.
"Hey, we have people coming. It's like 99 over 30 minutes or whatever,"
Mm,
and I was like, "Cool, yeah, I'll be under it." And they're like, "Well, will you be?" And it's like, "I'll be under it." And they're like, "Okay, cool." And I never had any issues, but that was because of like that compression stacking tool that I learned from Matt Durkis, by the way, who is a Bad Omens front of house engineer and a great friend, and set me up with those tools really well, and kind of taught me about all of that. And he's like a huge component of teaching me that, and that's why that mix it can sit in 95A over 60 minutes, and you still feel the big hits and moments and musical things, but I'm not like technically or scientifically like smashing anybody's, like I never had an issue, but you start to run away with it if you're not careful, and like that's in both ways. You can become way too compressed, and it's not musical, or it's like way too open, and it's like now your peaks are like really tapping up there, and now you're adding to the average, and now you're over, and like all this stuff.
exactly. Well, very, very important thing and very good to learn about it. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me today.
Of
And I'm sure
course.
a lot of people out there will appreciate everything you just told us.
Hope so.
And yeah, good luck with the rest of your touring year, be it pop music, country, metalcore, whatever you're doing. I'm sure we'll see you again on the road at some
Yeah,
point.
definitely.
And yeah, have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much.
Thanks.